All right, welcome. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm very excited to be kicking off our SBIR STTR virtual speaker series with Earl Hager from the Neutrino Donut. Today, he is going to be giving us an overview of the SBIR and STTR process. This is our first installment of our SBIR STTR speaker series. And we're very excited to get into it and learn all about this non-dilutive funding opportunity. So with that, Earl, I'll hand it over to you. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, how's everyone doing? I'm sorry, I just asked 100 people, how are you doing? Um, I'm going to run through the whole SBIR process. I have two versions of the proposal that I passed on to Cara. One is an abridged version, the other is the full version. I've also forwarded information on the number of SBIR grants which have been awarded in the state of Nevada over the last few years, as well as a list of the winners of SBIRs and STTRs over the last few years. So this information is available. You can contact her or myself, and I'll be happy to share it. I will also be happy to do one-on-one conversations with you after this event. I am in Los Angeles and generally available, and we can work out the timing on when we can talk about your processes. So my company is the Neutrino Donut. I am focused on the commercialization of science, and I have lots of expertise in grant programs specifically for SBIRs. So we're going to talk about the SBIR process. And I think the most effective way of doing this is to get into the weeds and having heavy discussions. And so that is my goal here. There's a lot of slides, and I'm planning on running through the meat of the slides, all of which I have on links to different parts of the different opportunities and information. So the long version is going to be available. This is me. It's my company. That's me with Stephen Hawking at the Caltech bookstore. I am a Texas company. I'm currently in Los Angeles, and I'm expanding to Omaha, Nebraska. If you're wondering why I'm expanding to Omaha and not Nevada, it's because I have one wife and she's from Nebraska, and I have no plans to make changes to that process. Government grants. So let's start. The government grants programs provide validation and they provide money. You can identify your long-term planning and goals and identify relationships that will help you grow the company. But the money and the validation are the two things that are very important in this process. With a phase one grant, which we'll be covering in a little more detail, goes up to $300,000. You're supposed to prove the scientific value of your idea. It gets reviewed by industry and technical experts, but it proves that your idea has technical merit, and that's the focus of it. In the phase two grant, which goes up to $2 million, you have to create a product, take it out to the marketplace, and get validation from the marketplace. Once you have customers, once you have a process and a product, you can then talk to angels and VCs from a much stronger position than you could before, and you might be able to create a more effective licensing / business development or market entry model. If you have questions, by the way, please put them in the chat and I can stop or cover them at the very end. Cara, if you could let me know if there's questions to answer.
Do you want me to call them out, or do you want to save them for the end?
Are there any now?
Not yet.
No?
No, not yet.
Okay. So well-prepared grant proposals get funded. If you don't get funded, you'll get feedback, and people will tell you you need to work on these items. Now, the good part about it is that the panel that is reviewing your grant application is usually going to be very good, and they're going to give you really good recommendations. The bad part is the next time you submit, it's going to be a different panel and a whole bunch of different people. But that's life. Coordinating the provisional patent application, which is one way of advancing things. You apply for your provisional at the same time you're submitting your grant application. You can then make a decision on whether or not you want to spend more money on the grant application itself. So the grant process has an aggressive time frame. Um, the um, the grants are announced and there's time periods. For example, September 5th was the last due date, and the next due date is January 5th. So you really need to move quickly if you're going to get the grant application in. So there's the numbers: research, commercialization. You can do a thing called a fast track, which is where you combine phase one and phase two. And when you complete phase one, you immediately go into phase two, which saves you the second application process time. If you bring in university partners, they will help you develop your budget for the grant. There's also straight to phase two, which is if you already have an active product and a market, you can then go straight to phase two and not do phase one at all. So part of what you need to do is in your initial conversation with the government agencies, create a two-page summary and also discuss your aims. And I'm going to cover the aims later in this application, but aims are a very important part of this process. Your principal investigator must be able to commit 51% of their time on the SBIR side of things. This is so you don't be a PI on two different projects. But also university professors may or may not be allowed to spend that much time on an outside project. I'm currently working with someone from a Texas university, and they can only work 2 days a week, so they are not going to be the PI. Aims. You have specific goals that you're planning on doing with your project, and they are part of the process of proving the outcome and the development of the idea. Ask yourself what objectives you want to achieve within the time frame, whether it's the aims are for the phase one or the phase two, and you usually have 2 to 4 specific aims. If you're going direct to phase two, you need to demonstrate that you can do phase one aims, and the phase one aims were successfully completed. So even if you don't do a phase one and go straight to phase two, you have to prove that you successfully completed the things that would have been required for the phase one. If you're an NIH person, I would look at the Bioscience Writers website, and the presentation has a link to that website and gives ideas on how to write your aims. You give yourself an act title, a summary of what you're planning on doing, your hypothesis, and whatever it takes to get the point across. The science people are going to be very solid on understanding what you're trying to do here. So here's an example. Aim one, you're establishing an innovative mouse model. So this is the goal and the title. So your strategy is the part in green: targeting vectors, silence, and it takes you that whole process. That's your strategy. And then the outcome: what does success look like? And this is when you're looking at your phase one and writing your report, you're going to say we successfully completed our aims in these areas. But there are the 3 parts to it: your title, what your strategy is, and what the outcome is going to be. And again, you have links here. So what are your odds of success? This is pulled from, these are all public reports, but this shows the success of SBIR projects and STTR projects within the state. And I know you can read this really well, but I'll just jump down to SBIRs in 2024 and there were in 2022, sorry, and there were 13 applications and 3 successes. So that's one of the, you don't have a lot of applications coming from your state. And this is a really hot area. I can tell you that a lot of the SBIRs go to the coastal states and along the South. Texas gets a lot of them, along with California, Oregon, the East Coast, Chicago, all those states. And there's a big push to move things into the heartland and to other opportunities. So you will be getting attention because they're trying to do this stuff. Especially with the Trump administration, there's going to be a big push to move things into other areas geographically. So even though the numbers are small, you need to look at the full picture of 13, 3 for 13, or as we like to call it, Aaron Judge's numbers. That's a Yankees joke. But that's you need to we need to find a way to increase the numbers and increase the success rates. The funding on an SBIR goes to a startup company. You have to create the company. R221 and other level grants go straight to the university and the professors, but you're going to be creating a company. You also can look into the military if there's a military applications and understand that the military very broadly looks at things. I sit on review panels, and one of the review panels I have did a thing on postpartum depression. They do a lot of work with orthopedics, and I'm currently looking one on head injuries. But there's another one also coming out on breast cancer, and I'm going to be part of that project. Kara, there was a question that popped up.
Yes, Ken Evans asks, is there a way to get an idea of the desired projects or areas of focus for federal agencies?
Yes, they're called topics, and that's coming up. That's a good question to ask. But we'll look at the topics and we'll talk about the strategy of getting into that. Another question?
No, Ken just saying thank you.
Okay. So the military has multiple SBIR projects in the same way. And the challenge in dealing with the military in this space is that the civilian agencies, NIH, DOE, and all that stuff, they're friendly people, and they will communicate with you. The military by law is not allowed to. So if they're not talking to you, it's not because they don't like you. It's because they're not allowed to. So there are DoD SBIR, STTR.mil submissions. CDMRP is congressionally designated military research projects, medical research projects, I'm sorry. And you see the links for there, and you can look up funding opportunities. This is a really good in the NIH space. But you should definitely be checking these things out. And it's a possibility to do the same grant twice. And if you're lucky, you'll win both, and then you'll have to resolve some of that and take money from, deduct money from one, because you can't have like overhead in two different places. Grant programs have a thing called a pay line. If you are below the pay line, you win. So the pay line, for example, if it's 28, they'll come back and say your pay line was at 26, but they still need to confirm it. So that's one way of giving you an idea of whether or not you made it or not. If the pay lines are usually in the, high 20s, and if it goes really high, if you're in the 40s, then you have a long way to go, and it's not going to happen. If you're dealing with the military is free to do whatever they want, in that if they need it, they're going to do it. Another question?
No, I'm adding your links to the chat.
Oh, okay.
We did have another question, Kara, above that from Tanya. She asks, we are participating in a NASA challenge and there are multiple applications for DoD, DOJ, etc., but they prohibit to participate in NSF grants. Can you please comment on this?
Say that again.
Sure. We are participating in a NASA challenge and there are multiple applications for DoD, DOJ, etc., but they prohibit to participate in NSF grants. Can you please comment on this?
Is this Tanya Raymond?
Tanya
No,
Silva.
this is Tanya Silva. And
Oh, okay, sorry. I don't know Tanya.
Yeah.
So you said DOJ, and that confused me.
No, it's not DOJ, it's DOE, Department of Energy.
Okay. So the National Science, the NSF tends to do a lot of stuff on phase ones, and it's a good way of getting some validation. But if you're going to go DOE and other areas, you need to pick wherever you're going to be successful. But I mean, everyone's got different rules, and I think they're trying to cut down on certain things being done multiple places. If you're working on a NASA project, you should stay with NASA. Create the relationships and work with them on that directly. And I have friends who have more expertise in this area. So Tanya, if you want to connect with me, I can ask your question of other folks and get some more comments for you. So let's chat afterwards. Okay?
Yes, thank you.
And my contact information will be at the end of this thing. So topics, which is the question that came up previously. You need to find out if what you're doing is of interest. So a topic, maybe cybersecurity in the Department of Energy. It may be under cancer for the NIH. There may be lots of different things, but you need to find the area that matches what you're looking for. There's also a section called Omnibus. But if you look under NIH or DOE topics, you'll find a list of the topic areas that they're doing. It'll also show you the different agencies, but it'll also show you the names of the program managers. The recommended strategy in this case is for the civilian organizations is to send an email out to multiple topic areas and say, this is what we're working on. What is the most effective option? And they will discuss amongst themselves what is the best option and tell you who you should be talking to, whether it's an omnibus option or whether they're going to do a specific targeted area. The main thing is that you want to not send multiple emails out because it makes it more difficult for them to figure out who they should be talking to. But that would be the way to go, is to look up the topics and see which ones might be of interest to what you're working on. But the topic is going to be very important, because if it's not of interest to them as a topic, they're going to reject it. If they covered it last time in the last go round, it's probably going to be rejected. But this is where you can find out things up front and where the interest is. And there were questions.
Yes, question we have from someone on their iPhone. How do I get grants? How do you get grants for a service business for new business with no LLC or credit?
Well, that's what we're talking about doing topics and aims and trying to create a business model and seeing where it fits into the government agencies' processes. So services are an option. It would be best if the services were advancing a scientific principle or of interest, but that's kind of what you needed to go through, is the topics and that area. Did that help?
I'm not seeing. Oh, go ahead. Okay. Yes. We are good.
Okay. So there's a lot of different topic areas, and you can see in the there's links here that go into it, but you really want to do a search and do Department of Energy SBIR topics, and you'll get to the topic list, and they'll have the current and the future topics. Usually in midsummer is when they announce the topics. You can also find out what the past awards were. The whole database of SBIR winners and topics and all these other things is all public, and you can look at it and find out what's going on in each area. So let's take a deep look at NIH grants. So you want to learn about the steps required. You look at the grant processes. You can drill down to learn more about each step and the process for guidance that can maximize your understanding of the process. But they publish a lot of information on this, and you want to make sure you got the latest stuff, because they don't always clean out the older information. So you look up and you find out that the National Institute of General Medical Sciences has this website, and here are the two program managers that you can contact. And by the way, this is slightly old, so I'm not sure if they're still there, but they're government employees, so why not? It's not January 20th yet. Anyway, so they do publish the contact information and the emails of these people. You want to connect with the program managers and talk to them about their ideas. They will give you 30 minutes of their time. You need to be prepared. And I talked about the 2-pager and the aims and getting that information together. And they'll give you feedback and say, yeah, this is a good idea, or next time, or this is what you need to fine tune your idea. In regard to the question of you doing services only, they may come back and say you need to have a product associated with this or something that is advancing in the marketplace. So as part of your submission, you want to put in your specific aims, and the aims are very important and as part of their evaluation process. So the weeds. If you're wondering, does the NIH ever do a seminar on these topics? Yes, they did, Tuesday and Wednesday this past week. They will be sending out the slides on the presentation in 7 to 10 days, and I will make them available to anybody who wants them. But they did a really massive 2-3 hour seminars. And I can share that information on the NIH part of the world. Applications are reviewed in study sections. There's the information on the study sections. If you have something where you have another person you don't like, you might want to find out if they're in your study section. They are very careful about screening conflicts of interest, and everyone is supposed to check themselves out of any conflicts of interest. Are there more questions?
Terry is saying that they would like the NIH info.
They like what?
They would like the NIH information.
Okay, email me. There's a roster of all the study sections, so you can find out who's volunteering on these things. So these are the options when you meet with a program manager, and this is the feedback you're going to get, whether they're going to suggest you a phase 1, then a separate phase 2, phase 2, a fast track, or straight to phase 2. The military and the civilian also have a phase 3 project. For the phase 3 under the military, it is a no bid contract, and they will allow you to, they will buy your product. There's interesting things going on with the SBIRs and continuing resolutions, in that when the military needs something new, they don't always get it out of the budget. So the SBIR is a way of getting things they need. More questions?
Andrea is asking if we could just send the NIH info out generally after the session, along with the slides and the recording.
Well, you have the slides on everything. The NIH stuff will be available in 7 to 10 days, and I will send that out as soon as I get it.
Great, thank you.
Phase 2 grants require commercialization plans. And what is key to understanding about commercialization plans is that this is about planning, not execution. You need to say, we are planning to do these sales processes. We are planning to have this distribution program. And it's about what you're planning to do, not what you've done. It's 12 pages long, and it requires a consultant to do these things. So questions: create your two-pager. NIH dates are January 5th, April 5th, and September 5th. And DOE is roughly the same time frame.
I don't think it was a question, Earl, but we do have a question in the chat, actually
Yes.
from Tanya Silva. If Nevada is so low on the apps, who is reviewing the applications? The people in California or New York? Wouldn't they reject Nevada because it's not viewed as a tech hotspot?
No, they're being reviewed out. They're being reviewed across the country. The review panelists come from everywhere. If you look at the members of the, let me scroll back. The study, in the environment of the study sections, you're going to see people from all over the country there, and they're very ethical about what they're doing. They're not making money on this stuff, so it's not. It's being run out of DC, but the reviewers are from everywhere across the country. The problem is that you're not applying. It's not that you're being rejected, it's just that you're not applying. The 13 people applying for SBIRs in 2022 are the issue, not the rejection of it.
Great, thank you.
This is one of the reasons why I'm expanding into Omaha, because Nebraska is becoming a research hotspot. They are going to the heartland. more and more, and there's a lot more attention being paid to these areas. When you look at competitive products, you can look at this collaboration, distribution opportunities. But the last thing is always the most important part is that doing nothing is always a competitor. So you need to justify why they want to do it. And a lot of the reasons why they don't want to do it is because you've got a sales cycle or because you've got a capital budget expenditure that is going to take multiple years to resolve. There's a lot of parts to it, but again, doing nothing is an option for people. So you want to figure out what the best slot is for the technology. If you've got a scanner that reads cancer cells, do you want to be a medical device or do you want to be a cancer technology? And the answer is probably a medical device because the National Cancer Institute, those folks are focusing on therapeutics more than they are devices. So part of your budget is a 7% profit margin. This is a little bit of a slush fund. This is to your advantage. You have money that you can throw in on the project into other areas if you need it. So that's money that's available. People use this when they hire grant consultants. If they're paying on a success fee, it'll come out of the profit margin. There's also legal expenses, which we'll get into a little bit later on, and there's some money that can be paid out of the profit margin from that area. But there's flexibility to do things. If you're looking at traveling as part of your budget, the GSA has a per diem rates, which will tell you the cost of hotels and a per diem for meals, and give you an idea of what you need to expense. It's important to understand that you're budgeting a number, but you're billing the actuals. And so if you say it's going to cost $4,000 to fly to the Javits Center in New York City, especially with those really fabulous cab rides from Newark to Manhattan. But you might put down $5,000 for the cost of the event so that you can then bill the actuals of $4,000 and you won't go over. Questions?
We have a question from Leona. Do you think that using TABA is a good idea?
TABA?
Yes, TABA.
TABA is an awesome thing, and we're going to cover that next. We will cover TABA. That's coming up. I've got a bunch of slides on that. You also have an overhead rate that you can put in 10%, which is called the de minimis rate, which is polite for you can't audit me. But for NIH, you can also go up to like 40% for the overhead rate. It really depends on the project, and you'll need some guidance from the people that you're dealing with. The program managers, et cetera, on the planning on that. If you're working with a university and you're hiring the university to help you with the project, which is always a good idea, the university has overhead rates. They'll tell you it's about $70,000 to hire a grad student, a postdoc, and then the overhead rate is 60% on top of that. So that turns a postdoc into $140,000. You also have a thing called the I-Corps program, which gives you $50,000 for marketing. This is before they claw back some of the money, but that pays for the travel expenses to go to different events and helps you with your goal of interviewing 100 people. So the revenue planning is really important on this, because part of what you need to do is you need to define your product, your idea. So who's your customer, the company? How do you get into the company? Who are you selling to, whether you're selling to a department or whether you're selling to the organization in total as a small business, or whether you're partnering with Amazon Web Services or Azure business partners. You find your customer and identify what level they are, and are you dealing with capital expenditures or are you dealing with expense spending? If the capital expenditures are too high, you might look into leasing programs. Can you sell multiple times into a large organization? If you're selling to a GlaxoSmithKline, selling it 10 times into 10 different departments, and growing from there is probably more of an effective strategy than trying to get anything done through corporate IT, because those people they're not pleasant. I work for them, but it's harder to get things approved on a corporate level than it is to sell a software as a service to individual departments. So what are you selling? Are you selling products, software, consulting, support services? This all comes into the package of what you're selling to them. So that if you say we're selling $10,000 per license, well, is there services on that? Are you supporting them? Are you consulting with them on the installation? Are you doing training? These are all part of the business model of what you're selling. So you come in and you say, in year one, we're going to sell you 2 licenses. In year 2, we're going to meet more people within the company, and we're going to sell more licenses plus the original 2, and so forth. And that's how you build up your sales model. You always want to leave the reviewers believing that more is possible. When you name your customers, you want to be able to say who they are and your contact points. And this is really where LinkedIn comes in very handy. So I have 40 customers. I'll close on 4 of them a year for the next 5 years. In year 1, it's going to be worth something. In year 2, it's larger. And the 5-year revenue plan is created from there. So you have 4, then 8, then 12, then 16 as far as the customers go. And then you have your year 1 sales with each of them. And then in year 2, you have a new block of year 1 sales plus the year 2 sales for your first year customers, and so forth. So that's the end of the weeds. The Department of Energy has their own funding opportunities. You meet the program directors. They describe the projects, the names, and who to contact. Get connected with them the same way we talked about with the NIH folks. So when projects are screened, there's usually like 10 to 20 reviewers in the room, and they all discuss how this is going to work. There's a lot of different people with different levels of expertise. Some are reviewing specific aspects of it. Some are reviewing the whole thing. But then the agency gets the final review based on the comments that are made. Another question?
No, just adding your links to the chat unless I missed one.
Okay.
Yep.
So the thing is that it's very difficult to fix this to hurt somebody. I mean, you'll know if you've got a competitive grant on there, and that's one of the things that gets kicked back. But you'll know who's involved, and you'll know that if there's a conflict or whatever the case may be. So one of the consistent failures on a phase 2 grant is the commercialization process. I was on one grant thing where they said the CEO was going to call their friends and they were just going to sell to their friends. And I said, you can't do that. And then I got the same plan the year later where they said the same thing. And it's like, you still can't do that. But you've got to put together a process for sales. You also need to understand the customer buying process. For example, if you are talking about selling software to a large corporation, they need to be talking to you in May through July, because that's when decisions are being made. If you're talking about selling to retail, everybody shuts down everything from September on because they are focusing on year-end sales through the holidays. A lot of people will buy their software because they've got the money available on January 1st. So the first 2 weeks of January is when all the purchases are being made. And after that, the well is dry. You got to understand the processes, and you got to understand when they do things. If you're associated with a project, then you need to find out when they are working on the project, when they've applied for the project, and how you can be part of it. But this might be a matter of being at the right spot over a 3-year period. The other thing is, if you're selling support services over multiple years, you want to sell a multiple year contract to these folks, because otherwise you're banging on their door every year, and it's really easy for you to be eliminated from the budget on an annual basis. But if you sell them a 3 or 5 year contract, then you provide the services continually. So you don't want to say that you've got a $15 billion market and you're going to get 5% of the market. You really want to break it down and say, this is the customers, this is how we're going to get there. You can move money around in this project, your budget. However, the PI has to get reviewed by the agency. So that's the only thing that is critical on that stage. So TABA. So TABA funding is $6,500 on phase 1s and $50,000 on phase 2. It's taken from the grant total. It's a separate line item for everybody. On phase 1s for NSF, there is no TABA. On phase 2, there's 50K. You have ways of spending this money, either focusing on developing. If you get the phase 1 TABA money of $6,500, a lot of people use that to hire the contractors to help them write the phase 2. You can also use the money for different aspects and different areas. And if you look up the TABA funding, and this is included on the long version of it, but the TABA funding goes into, you can spend the money on legal, defining your patents. You can do it for regulatory support. You can do it for a lot of different things. You can't do travel, but there's things you can do with it beyond just hiring a commercialization consultant and things like that. So you really want to look into how this is going to work. And that's a critical part of this. So don't ignore the TABA funding. So many people ignore it because they don't find it to be a value. It is a value. There are people you can bring in beyond just the standard consultants, and you're leaving money on the table. Don't ever leave money on the table. It's bad. Bad. Your commercialization plan is really critical. It is important to have a commercialization plan as part of it and not use this all for research and regulatory, because you want to demonstrate that you are trying to get into the marketplace. And Senator Rand Paul, that was his big sticking point, because they were getting very angry at all the SBIR mills that were continually just doing that were just going out there and applying for things and not really taking things to the marketplace. And so the commercialization plan is really critical. So you need to manage the process. And if you don't do it in advance, you lose your ability to do it, because you can be assigned to an external vendor who will then control everything, such as a LARDA or someone else. And you'll be limited in not only what you can do, but also they charge an overhead rate, and you don't have the same access to the funds. Most of these people, the foresights, the largest, charge 50%. And so if you do it yourself and designate your own vendors, you don't give up that 50%. NIH has their funding stages, solving technical problems. That's where they want to help you focus on things. If you go into this link, it'll take you into the details of the TABA funding. So there's the numbers, the fast track. You can get fast, if you do that, you get the TABA funding on both projects, but not for the phase 3 CRP pilots.
Earl?
Yes.
Ken asks, will Nevada have a designated pool of TABA funds?
No, the winner of the grant gets the TABA funds. Your company gets the TABA funds. It's not assigned to the state or a group of applicants. It is assigned to the company specifically.
Mm-hmm. Next question is, who does TABA funds apply for?
Who does TABA when?
Who does TABA funds apply for? So who can apply for TABA?
When you apply for your grant, you apply for TABA. There's a line item under direct expenses, and you'll add TABA and then you'll delete TABA. We can help you with that, but basically you put in that you're going to have the TABA funding. The people who you designate as your TABA vendors will put in a letter of support saying that you're providing TABA services at this rate and this amount, and you can have multiple people do that. You can have my company helping with commercialization. You can have the lawyers coming in and helping you with other aspects of it, the regulatory people like that, all of it. So it adds up to the number that is available in the tab of funding. But you make that part of your application. And that's a detail that we can help you with.
And if you don't apply for TABA when you apply for the grant and you get the grant, you could apply for TABA later, correct?
Not necessarily. DOE says no. Other
Okay.
places might allow you to do it, but the other part is that there is a designated vendor for a lot of these things, and it's automatically assigned to the designated vendor unless you specifically say otherwise.
Great, thank you.
Clawing back from the designated vendor is not an easy thing.
Got it. Thank you. Next question is, how do you help someone like me apply for the grant?
So I do things for free in the beginning. I will take you through the putting together the 2-pager, the aims, and the meeting. After that, we'll talk about the wonderful people in the Nevada Economic Development Group, about their phase 0 funding programs that will fund people like me or others. And basically, we can take you through the process of creating the grant, identifying people that will be that will help you develop the research part of the grant, as well as the commercialization of the grant and getting the application input. Next month, there's going to be some folks from Baginski, who used to be your leader, and they will be talking about the grant process, and they also work through these same programs, so that there are people who can help you with the entire process. The main thing is that I will take you through the beginning of it, and we're going to find out if we actually have a project. Because if we don't have a project, then we need to rethink things. But if we do have a project, then we can move ahead. But that's free, because it's a really bad business model to say, you owe me $500 and sorry, it didn't work out. People get grumpy with that business model. So if you're interested, let's talk and let's get things started, and I'm free to help with that process. Okay. Other questions?
Nope, we're good. Thank you, Earl.
Okay. So there's some of the things that TABA funding can support. And they cannot support audit services, bookkeeping. The patent costs, as part of it is the applying for the patent itself, and those fees, but that's only a few $1,000s, so that's not big of a deal. But if there is a question, they'll take you through that stuff. You need to go into the technical assistance. This is part of the budget process and the budget justification, which I can take you through. And that's pretty well it. Now, if you go through the non-abridged version of this thing, I go through the other agencies, DOE, National Science Foundation, and other areas. So there's more out there. The DOE people, the Department of Defense people, if you're interested in this thing, you're going to Austin, Texas, December 3rd through 5th, because that's when they're having their next event. Lots of the SBIR folks from all the different agencies are going to be there. And it is Austin, it is December, and it's at the JW Marriott, which is right next to Lady Bird Lake, and some nice jogging trails, and you can walk to South Austin from there. I live there, I can tell you these things. But the next big push, if you're serious, it's going to be worth the trip to Austin for those 3 to 5 days. There is a charge to go to the expo floor, which is probably what you're interested in doing. And there is a discount code which Kara has available and can share with you that will knock 50% off of it or something like that.
And I can send that code out in the email following this.
Okay.
Earl, we do have another question. What are the maximum amounts of business can get from an SBIR?
300,000 on a phase 1 and 2 million on a phase 2. And when you're looking at the applications, you'll see the amounts. Any other next question or?
From Logan, if a project required to validate a concept for phase one may run over the overall $300,000 budget offered, does it hurt to say that the company that's applying will cover other costs of the narrative, or is that discouraged?
You can have friends and family covering that. Part of the challenge in there is to make sure that you justify that you need the SBIR money, because if you have lots of external money, then maybe you don't need the SBIR, which is not a good place to be. You kind of want to focus and develop the thing so it stays within the $300,000 budget, and you want to attack the other things as part of the phase two. So make it simple for them. Say, I've got $300,000 worth of stuff to do in this project, and then do more later on. Does that help? And we can talk about that in more detail if you want to set up a time. Okay.
Logan says yes. We can catch up after
Okay.
this call.
States will match your funding. Buffalo, New York, Kentucky, Tennessee. I'm not sure what Nevada does. Am I pronouncing this right? Nevada?
Nevada.
Nevada. Sorry.
Okay.
But there are states that will provide you with money to move there. And if you have IP companies get purchased. So now what? Review the information. We'll look up the topics. We'll figure out your aims and put together the 2-pager. You'll discuss how you want to do this and what you want to do. Review your funding options. Talk to the program managers. And this is a chessboard my daughter sent me. And this is a legal board. Basically, what happened was the White Knight advanced and then retreated. The White Knight lost his nerve. You don't want to lose your nerve. You need to do this. And once you commit to doing it, you got to go all out into this thing, because that's the only way to succeed. And there's the end. So this is all about the planning. So I'm open for questions. I am also open to have chats over the next few weeks about specific ideas. But comments, questions?
Thank you, Earl. All right, any questions in the chat, guys? And yes, I will send Earl's slides and the recording and his information out after this call. Let's see.
Oh, Earl, we've got a question in the chat from Tanya. She asks, how does this align with the Nevada Tech Hub designation, and can you apply for both?
Cara?
You can apply for both. They are different entirely. So the SBIR's STTR is really a small company, less than 500 employees, would be applying for that sort of funding to do R&D support for their business. But the Tech Hub designation is a larger consortium, and we have our 2 tech hubs here in Nevada. And so you can participate in those tech hub activities, and I would encourage you to apply for an SBIR STTR, especially if you are in one of these tech hub areas, so that you can have the funds to pursue that technology that you're working on.
Perfect, thank you.
You also need to designate other income sources. So if you're getting more money from another organization, that has to be part of the math that you're doing.
So I wanted to share our next speaker session for you guys, which is going to be on December 5th. Please be sure to register. This is an ongoing speaker series. We'll have released some fantastic speakers for this year that are coming up. And I'm so glad that Earl is here to kick us off and to tell us more about the SBIR program. You can connect with Earl after this through email, and we'll send out his information. Something else that is coming out that we're very excited to share is, so this is part of our Nevada FAST grant. which is funding this speaker series, but it's also funding our proposal accelerator. So everybody here who has questions and would like somebody to walk them through the process, we have an accelerator we are launching in April, and we're going to be doing it twice next year, where we are going to walk you through everything you need to know to submit an application. And the goal is on the very final day, final week, you are right there with us and we're hitting that submit button and you have a full and completed and strong application. And Earl is going to be teaching 3 of those sessions, and he is going to be offering advice, and all of that, everything is free and offered virtually, so everybody has an opportunity to participate. We'll be sending more information out about that proposal accelerator. In the meantime, please be sure to join more of our speaker series events and register so that you are in the loop about upcoming opportunities. And I did see some stuff happening in the chat. So Andrew, if you wouldn't mind monitoring the chat, because I can't see it.
Yeah,
in your
lots of
screen.
good conversation and thank yous, but we did have one more question in all the thank yous. Appreciate you guys coming, by the way. Does the funding apply primarily for tech companies and innovative medical equipment?
Yeah, I put an answer out there is each agency has different goals. NIH does health, DOE does energy, they do cybersecurity as well, NOAA does oceans, USDA does agriculture. I mean, each agency has different goals and intents. So it's you're not playing from a pool of everything. You're playing for the NIH stuff or the NIH for health things.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Do I expect any changes because of Doge? I have no idea. It's a serious question, and part of it, this program has been funded for the next 3 years. We are now in year 2 of the funding, so it's probably pretty solid, especially because the new administration doesn't submit their budget until well, I mean, they still have the continuing resolutions going on, but they would probably have a budget available for October 1st, but they wouldn't necessarily be rewriting this budget. But I don't really know. I can't read the tea leaves on this, and I'm also a screaming liberal.
So if you you can take a look at the SBIR STTR Reauthorization Act if you are curious about keeping tabs on this. There is a group, SSTI, if that's correct, Earl. I believe that's SSTI. They keep tabs on the renewal process and the reauthorization of that. So it would be up for renew next fall. So we would know more. Probably by summer.
Logan, for NIH phase 1, what if the proposing company doesn't have any preliminary data collected for that grant application? Well, that's part of what you do for a phase 1 is you're trying to say, this is where we're going to create the data and find the information, and your relevant expertise in adjacent areas is very valuable. And so, I mean, the fact that you can deliver on what you're about to try to do is important. So what you described is possible in the SBIR phase 1 world.
Yeah, for sure. My main question though was, should you focus more on like pre-existing like literature out there that is a little bit more relevant to the topic that you're playing at hand? Right now, I'm assisting a company with a grant application that's somewhat out of their wheelhouse. It's a biosensor, but the main thing is that we're just kind of trying to figure out how to do their preliminary data. They don't really have much in this specific area that they're proposing to at the NIH, but they have a lot of different like proof of concepts and successful executions in different industries. I was just wondering how that would be viewed by the NIH and if it would be more strategically valuable for them to put an emphasis on the current like trends in like studies related towards the concept they're going after, or the kind of less relevant, but hey, we executed different concepes that they
the expertise of the people is what they're betting on.
Okay.
So that would be the strong thing the stronger argument to make is that you have the expertise and you've done these things. If they are part of a university, that's even better, bringing in the postdocs, because it also points to the fact that you probably have an innovation that has not necessarily been covered, which is also a good thing. Does that help?
Yeah, that does. Thank you very much. I appreciate your.
Jay, your question to reach out to companies. Yeah, they're doing programs all the time. They're doing road shows. They're visiting people. If you go to Austin in December, you can meet with the different SBIR folks. If you look under road shows for DOE, DOD, and all the other people, they do come out and visit different areas that are potentially underserved. So yeah, there is a lot of reach out to people that have never applied. It's not a negative on this one. It's a matter of making sure that you know how to write the grant and you're getting the support to write the grant so that it's effective for possession.
And on the topic of support, if you all don't know Logan Jones, he is the point person for the Sierra Accelerator for Growth and Entrepreneurship, SAGE, here in Nevada, and they can offer support and resources to help you with your application. So Logan, if you can put your information down in the chat, they are a key partner on our SBIR speaker series.
Yeah, I was just wondering who knew UNR.
Yep,
that's Logan.
Yep, that's me.
Logan, if I can help you out on anything on the side, I'd be happy to do whatever.
We'll be in contact, Earl. Thank you very much.
What else?
All right. Unless there are no more questions, we are at time. I'm going to send out this recording and the slides and Earl's information. And be sure to register for our next session on December 5th. And thank you all so much for being here. Earl, thank you so much for your time.